Good morning and welcome to the Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Laguna Beach. My name is Noreen Kukinen and I'm your worship associate this morning. Our program is entitled Laura's House, offering hope to victims of domestic abuse. Laura's House gives people like the woman in this video by Savage Garden a place of refuge when they're threatened by the horror of domestic violence. Our fellowship is small, but we spiritedly maintain our connections because we're friends and we help each other in our spiritual journey. If you're new to UUFLB, we'd like you to be our friend, and we hope that you will return for future services. We are in a period of change and we see some bright lights on the horizon, and you would be most welcome. Many thanks to all who play an integral part in getting our services going on Sundays. Carol Cole at the piano, Pam Floodman and Don West Jr. handling the tech needs, and Paul Bogdan and Candy Strock, who make our church feel like home. Thank you also to the unnamed others who do so much for UUFLB. In Unitarian Universalism, we accept you for whom and what you are. We are a welcoming congregation with membership open to all who are in accordance with our principles, mission, and vision. We unconditionally welcome any and all of you to our community of mutual caring and serious intent to grow as spiritual and moral beings. We gather because we share the same values, and we can help each other achieve a purposeful and meaningful life. We Unitarians embrace 7 values, and we can help each other as we journey that path. Our first principle, which inspires us to affirm and promote the inherent dignity and worth of every person, is especially pertinent today as we learn about domestic violence from our speaker, Veronica Stephens, who represents Laura's House. I'm speaking to you this morning from Granada, Nicaragua, founded in 1523 by Spanish conquistador Hernán de Córdoba. It is the country's oldest town, and it has many beautiful colonial style buildings and a few of the originals even. It's the country's oldest town and sits on the side of Lake Cociboca, which on maps usually looks like Lake Nicaragua. Every morning I take a walk to the lake at the edge of town. I'm greeted often with people saying, "Buen dia," with a big smile on their face. It's a very poor country, but somehow people manage to find joy and happiness for the most part. Of course, it's like any country where you don't see what goes behind closed doors. I usually walk past a statue in the park, and the inscription reads very roughly, "The mother gives all of herself in the love of others." This praise of woman is a beautiful sentiment, but the reality is that women often have a difficult life here and aren't always given that great respect. They have babies when they are very young and are most often left to raise the children alone. Grandmas step in at a time when they are infirm and looking for golden years, but it becomes the burden of the women to raise the children in many cases. In the worst case, the mothers may suffer grave injury or even become victims of femicide at the hands of people who profess to worship women. Fortunately, this doesn't occur often, but it does occur. I'm pleased to be friends of the Missionaries of Charity in Granada, who help people in these straits. They do many good works, one of which is housing young girls who have suffered abuse or who are at risk from neglect, abandonment, and even from trafficking. Domestic abuse is not limited to the world of machismo, of course, and it happens to men and women too. Our speaker this morning represents Laura's House, a highly acclaimed Orange County organization that addresses some of the same problems as the sisters in Granada. Laura's house offers a safe place for victims, mainly women, to escape domestic abuse and develop safe self-esteem and skills to break the cycle of abuse. We're honored to have Veronica Stephens with us this morning to tell us more about this very important work. Welcome, Veronica. We come together on Sundays as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light a chalice in our service as the only symbol of our faith. It's a sign that we are searching for truth and meaning. This morning, Paul Bogdan has agreed to light our chalice. If you have a candle at home, this is a good time to light it. Thank you, Paul. Our centering thought this morning is from Mother Teresa. The sisters in the photograph you saw earlier are missionaries of charity, which is her organization. But she often spoke succinctly about the basic needs in life, and this is pretty succinct. If you want to change the world, go home and love your family. It's a very good thought for all of us. Our opening hymn this morning is from Carol, and it's number 1053. How could anyone?
Good morning, everyone. Please join me in singing How Could Anyone? How could anyone ever tell you that you're anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you're less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you're anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you're less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
It's beautiful, and thank you, Carol. Let's read together our affirmation. Please turn on your mic. May we be reminded
here
of our
highest
aspirations
and inspired
to
bring
our
gifts
gifts
of
of
love
love
and
and
service
to
to
the
the altar
altar
of
of humanity.
May we know once
Once
again
again, that
that
we are
we are
not
not
isolated beings, but
connected
connected
in
mystery and miracle
miracle
to
to
the universe, to this community, and to each other.
Ours is a welcoming community where we find connection, a spiritual community where we find meaning. Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified, a caring community where our sorrows are lessened. We take this moment to reflect on the joys and sorrows, and acknowledge the mutual support we give each other. I do believe we're friends, and this is where we show that. Perhaps you have a silent joy or sorrow that you're celebrating in your heart, we're with you too. And if you would like to light a candle for that in our sanctuary, this is the time to do that. But we'll start with Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom who has a joy or sorrow to share? The following is a response litany from UU Minister Reverend Dennis McCarthy of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Columbus, Indiana. It was especially written for victims of domestic violence. And I'd like you to speak it with me, focusing on the highlighted refrain. So I'll read the part that's not highlighted. And will you please read the refrain? It's a reminder of what we can do in this time of abuse. In the spirit of love, harmony, and remembrance, we stand too often divided, too often set apart from one another in heedless ways. We seek to be compassionate, but our vision may be clouded or distracted. We too often go forward day by day and look without seeing. Together,
And
may we reach out in
honesty and love.
honesty and love. May we work to heal the divisions which separate Earth's children one from another. May we peer through the mists of deception which hide and deny violence, mists enclosing those who suffer. May we not allow the misuse of our fellow souls to hide in broad daylight. May we
reach out
in
honesty
and love.
and love.
When we see the afflicted, however they may be afflicted, may we not shrink away. May we not blame suffering on the one who suffers. May we be courageous enough to perceive suffering and compassionate enough to attend to the voices of those who suffer. May we
reach out in honesty
love.
and love.
When we see prejudice, when we hear evil speaking, when we witness the rough hand or the scathing word laid upon the helpless or innocent, may we resolve to work toward unity and justice. May we
reach out in honesty and love.
May we not turn away from the wounded head of the abused. May we not accept the twisted reasoning by which the oppressor declares himself the victim. May we reach out
in honesty and love.
Let our gratitude for good fortune in our lives lead us not to complacency, but to awareness of those whose lives are shadowed by abuse or neglect. May we not ignore signs of deceit or denial that hide brutality. May we reach out
in
honesty and love.
In all things, may those who suffer ever be able to approach us, find a kindly ear and supporting hand. May we witness for love and justice at every level of relationship. May we nurture a keen eye and a strong and loving heart for any who fear the hurtful rod, the cutting voice, the uneven hand, the chain of oppression, great or small. May we
reach out
in
honesty and love.
Amen. During the offertory, we recognize that support is needed to continue the mission of our fellowship. Together, we can build a bigger pot to advance the causes that we believe in. Please use the following means to send your donation to UUFLB. These are the same places to send money as you received in the email announcing today's service. We give what we can, and we hope that it makes a bigger difference in the world when we pool our money together. Let's join our voices to sing our song of thanksgiving for all that we receive. You I receive, from you I give.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Thank you, Carol. And thank you to everyone in UUFLB who believes in this congregation and strives to keep it going. Now comes the part that we've been anticipating. I'd like to introduce our speaker. Her name is Veronica Stephens, and she's the Education and Outreach Department Manager for Laura's House, a nonprofit that offers education and comprehensive services to domestic violence survivors in Orange County. She has been instrumental in the creation and implementation of programs and workshops such as the Healthy Family series, How to Help the Unpacking Family Systems series, and other successful adult education curriculum. Formerly the president of Action Force Network, Veronica created and developed human trafficking curriculum and presentations with topics including links between domestic violence and human trafficking, protecting children in a digital age, paths from pornography to sexual violence. Her youth-based curriculum was presented in Orange, Los Angeles, and Riverside counties. We warmly welcome Veronica Stephens to our fellowship.
Good morning. I know it is a heavy topic, but we will get through it this morning, and it is an important topic. So today I'm going to be presenting a little bit on, if you want to share the screen, on domestic violence. As she said, I am with Laura's House. We are a domestic violence agency here in Orange County. We are now about 27 years old. You're going to see a picture of a little girl on the screen. This is Laura. She is who our agency is actually named after. Now, the reason why we use her picture, this particular one, is because it's her mom's favorite picture. However, Laura did grow up and she got married, she had children, and unfortunately it ended up being a very violent relationship. And one night, after a very intense beating about 28 years ago, right here in Orange County, she found herself unconscious in the emergency room. The emergency room doctors, when they examined her, she had multiple broken bones, bruised throughout her body, collapsed lungs, a head contusion, but they also realized that she had had previous injuries, which clearly had never been given the medical treatment that they needed. Well, unfortunately, Laura never woke up. She ended up dying that night as a result of the last beating from her husband. As you can well imagine, her family was completely heartbroken, because not only did her husband not serve one day for killing his wife, but he was never formally charged with the crime. And as a matter of fact, the police have been called to that residence multiple times on domestic disturbance calls. And of course, when he opened the door, he just apologized for being too loud and disturbing the neighbors, and that we would expect. However, what we might not expect is if Laura was ever seen by one of the law enforcement officers and asked if she needed any help, if there was anything that they could do for her, she too would decline their help and said that it was fine. If she had any visible signs of injuries, she would just say that, you know, accidents happen. It happened on the tennis court, or she took a tumble down the stairs. And that's a little bit about what we're going to be seeing today is what is domestic violence? Because as I shared Laura's story, And her mom is actually the founder of Laura's House. She got a group of women together in Orange County and she shared her daughter's story. She also gathered a group of experts that night to talk about what was going on in Orange County, that this was not an anomaly. This was not an isolated incident. And she had enough financial support. She had enough hands-on support that Laura's House was started that night back in 1994. Laura's story is horrific. And we serve clients who are receiving that level of violence on the daily, and that is that physical harm. And that is the first thing that comes to our mind when we talk about domestic violence, is we do think of black eyes, broken bones. The reality, it is not the number one way that a partner will hurt another partner. It is pervasive. And when we talk about physical harm, it's everything you would imagine it to be. So it is that punching, kicking, hitting, slapping, scratching, grabbing, shoving. However, it is also just when one of the partners uses their body to oppress, intimidate, or terrorize their partner. So it could be throwing of objects, and the object doesn't have to be thrown at their partner. It could be thrown in the opposite direction. Same with punching holes in the walls. Skin on skin contact doesn't have to be made, but one of the partners is using their body to let the other partner know, I am ramping up. And of course, I didn't aim for you this time, but I very well may next time. So you need to line up. And that is, we would also put that under physical harm, but then we have verbal and emotional harm. And this is the number one way that partners harm each other. It is the intentional harm from one partner to the next to cause that emotional pain. And it would be through public humiliation, through labeling, through shaming, constantly criticizing, where the partner feels like they can never measure up. They're given a list of to-dos and then they check every box. It still isn't enough. And so they are constantly being put down, shamed, screamed, yelled at. However, the polar opposite would be emotional harm as well. These are intimate partner relationships. And so when one of the partners withdraws, silent treatment, no eye contact, no communication, no physical contact, and is that kind of that still contempt, where they're still under the same roof and yet they refuse to engage in any kind of relationship because they want to let their partner know that they are not worthy of their love because they have upset them. And this is not the silent treatment. This is not the cold shoulder. It is that on steroids. There are some of our clients, their partner hasn't talked to them for weeks, sometimes months. Now, they don't file for divorce, nor do they leave their partner, because that's not the point. The point is to humiliate them, to let them know that they are not worthy of communication until they acquiesce to whatever demands there were. And then we have that psychological harm, and gaslighting is kind of now a catchphrase. It is used in our society on many levels, and yet it's, I would say, more pervasive in intimate partner relationships. We call it crazy making behavior. When one of the partners, let's say, puts their keys on the counter when they get home from work or from a day out, and the next morning they look for their keys, but their keys are missing. The other partner comes out and asks what they're doing. I'm looking for my keys. I left them on the counter. Well, clearly you didn't leave them on the counter, or they'd be there on the counter, but I'll help you look for them. And they go into the bedroom, they come out 5 minutes later with the keys. And of course the partner asks, where were they? Well, exactly where you put them, in your nightstand. Well, they didn't put them in the nightstand. It is altering the reality of their partner to make them feel like they're losing their mind. And it is usually followed up with, you would be lost without me. You'd lose your head if it wasn't screwed on. No one else would have you. You're such a scatterbrain. You need me more than I need you, thereby really anchoring them in that relationship. It happens the first time. It might get them a little off kilter. If it happens on the daily, constantly, then the person truly does feel as though they would be lost without their partner. And gaslighting could also take the form of when they are publicly humiliated. And maybe on the car ride home, the partner on the receiving end of the shame says, I hate it when you embarrass me when we're out with friends and family. And the response is, what are you talking about? I never said that. Well, yeah, you did. No, I didn't. What is wrong with you? You always shift everything in your brain. You blow things out of proportion, or they deny the harmful impact. You're so overly sensitive. You're extremely dramatic. Everybody else knew it was a joke. Why don't you know it's a joke? And then we have sexual abuse. These are intimate partner relationships, and yet consent still needs to be present. And especially if physical violence is present in that relationship, and an argument that escalates to a fight, rape then can occur, thereby letting them know that you have zero control over anything in this relationship, even your own body. And then we have spiritual harm, and that is when one partner is not allowed to practice their faith freely. We actually had a client who liked to go to church on Saturday nights, of which her partner said that was selfish. You should be home with me and the family. And he parked his car at the end of the driveway, so she was stuck. Well, she thought, okay, next week I'll park along the curb. And that way I can get out, of which he parked his truck in front of her and then his motorcycle behind her, and she wasn't allowed to come and go freely. Also forcing a faith or religious belief system onto their partner, not allowing them to practice their faith or spirituality freely. And then we have financial harm when only one partner is allowed to work, the other partner has to stay home. One partner can invest in their higher education, the other partner has to work to support them. And when they think it's their turn, now that their partner has their degree or their master's, then they too can go and invest in themselves and go back to college, of which they're told that they are selfish. We already have student loans. What is wrong with you? You always think of yourself, and you know I can make more money than you. So you know what, it's probably just best if you stay home. One partner can spend freely, the other one is put on a very tight budget. And then of course, a phenomenon in the past about 10 years, but has been out there for about 20, and that is using cyber. Their partner using technology to harm their partners by putting tracking devices on their phone. They have no idea they're being tracked on their cars, downloading software into their computers. So every email, social media accounts are all have unauthorized access, changing of passwords on cell phones. So they actually turn off their partner's cell phone. They have no access to the outside world. When they call and ask Verizon to turn their phone back on, they say, we can't, just tell us your password, or the password has been changed. Not a problem, just answer these security questions. They too have been changed. And they'll do that with bank accounts and so forth. I wish that these harms just stayed neatly in their boxes, but the reality is they all just leak into each other. If somebody is being physically harmed, of course that hurts them emotionally, because the person they love has just caused them this pain, but also hurts them psychologically, because now they're living in terror. What did I do? And usually they internalize that this is my fault. What did I do? What can I change to make sure that they live happy? Because if they're happy, I am happy. Thereby birthing codependency. Now, when we talk about intimate partner harm, I'm going to give you some statistics so that you know just how pervasive it actually is. 1 in 3 females will experience intimate partner harm in their lifetime. This one might be a surprise to you. 1 in 4 men will as well. Women can most definitely be the primary aggressors. And we see it all the time at Laura's house. For members of the LGBTQ+ community, they're right in there with the same female stat as 1 in 3 will experience harm in their relationships. The national average for teen dating violence, those are for teenagers who go into dating relationships prior to the age of 18, is 1 in 3 as well. However, we are in classrooms, we talk about healthy relationship to our kiddos. We've been doing it for close to 17 years. We've heard lots of stories, lots of disclosures. So we partner with Chapman University because we wanted to get our finger on the pulse of what is happening here in Orange County. And Chapman University did an exhaustive teen dating violence study and shows that we have twice the national average. 2 out of 3 teenagers experience harm in their dating relationships prior to the age of 18. Now, most fortunately, it is a very preventable crime. This is something that is generational in families very often. And when we address that family culture and the generational harms that are passed on, once you identify something, you can address it and you can heal it and you can move forward. So when we know of individuals and maybe someone in our family or in our friendship circle, we know that they're in a harmful relationship, We think, why don't they just leave? Like, why stay? The reality is when you work in this space, you have to practice a lot of empathy, put down our preconceived notions, because unless we've walked a mile, we probably don't actually know what we would do. Not to mention, if we see it through their eyes, we're going to recognize that there's a lot of barriers between them and self-sufficiency. And then one of the barriers would be fear. They're afraid. I mean, if their partner has said, if I can't have you, no one can have you. And so there's a threat of death if they were to leave. That is pressing, but sometimes they're just afraid to be alone. Maybe they've been in a relationship since 8th grade. They don't even know how to navigate outside of an intimate partner relationships. If they think they have no support, often individuals who are in these harmful relationships are very isolated from friends and family. Of course, the ongoing threats, and they truly do believe it will change. This is a cycle. It is usually not bad 365. There are times of harmony and encouragement and nourishing, and then it will go through another cycle of tension building and then explosion and right back to being the best edited version of themselves. So you can see there on your screen, there's many reasons why people stay. It's shared children as well. Obviously, no one really wants their children to have to bounce between two houses, to have two separate sets of clothes, shared holiday time, but they're also really afraid their children are going to be taken away from them. We should never diminish the fear of child protective services for someone who's in some of these relationships. We have individuals who will not stay in these harmful relationships for just years. They will stay for decades until that last child has left the home. And then the financial dependency. However, the number one reason why they stay is not up on the screen. The number one reason why they stay is love. These are intimate partner relationships. They love their partner. Their partner has often told them, you make me a better person. If you leave me, I might harm myself. And they do love their partner. And they are, like I said, times when they are so kind, so generous, and so loving. At Laura's House, we offer a whole litany of programs and services. We do have that 24-hour emergency hotline where a trained advocate is on the other end of that line to help the individual who is called. If they need shelter on that first phone call, they are going to be offered our emergency shelter on that first phone call. Our emergency shelter, our clients can be with us up to 45 days. All of their needs are met. They usually just come with the clothes on their back, that of their children as well. And so they are given wardrobes, hygiene, food, and of course, therapeutic services. At the end of 45 days, if they need continued support, they are offered a transitional housing where they can be with us anywhere from 6 months to 12 months. It's solely based on their needs. And once in transitional, our therapist and their case manager are going to identify every barrier between them and self-sufficiency, give them all the resources that they need, continue their therapeutic services for them and for their kiddos. And then they exit our program thriving and able to live a supportive life. We also have counseling services. We are best known for our emergency shelter. However, that is not the number one service that we have. The majority of our clients just are outpatient, out-client services where they take advantage of our counseling resource centers. We have one in Aliso Viejo. We also have it up in Garden Grove. We have legal advocacy, which is in Garden Grove Center, right around the street from the family justice court system there in Orange. And that is where we help our clients obtain those restraining orders. And once they have that restraining order, we then assign a case manager and they will go to every single court appointment with them. And then we also have the resale stores. Somebody talked to me about our resale stores. They are wonderful. We have one in Lake Forest. We also have one in San Juan Capistrano. It is a valuable source of revenue to keep our shelter and our programs and services open. And then people can donate their gently used clothing, goods, jewelry, home goods as well. If anybody's been to our resale stores, you will know it's not a thrift shop. It looks like a consignment store because they're very well used clothing, We don't accept anything that has been too worn, and all dishes have to have the complete set, no chips and all of that. And then we also have the community workshops, as was in my bio. Those are free, they're virtual, they're online. We offer them every month, as well as the education department, of which we go into nonprofit agencies and we offer training to their staff, but they also bring us in as supportive services for their clients. And so whether it's addiction recovery, mental health facilities, where we come in and also bring our training to equip them. And like I said, on the prevention arm, we go into middle schools, high schools, and universities and talk about healthy relationships, because as much as we love those kiddos, we do not want them as our clients as they get older. There is a 3-step approach when somebody wants to exit a relationship. And by the way, it takes about 6 times for someone on the receiving end of harm to actually leave for good. Breaking up is not a problem. Staying away is the problem. And so it can take up to 6 times. The first thing, they'll call. And then if they call our agency, we're going to ask them to get an action plan in place. Even if they say, I have no intention of leaving my marriage, my relationship, we take them where they're at, and then we say that's absolutely fine. They're entered into our counseling services, but they still have to have that emergency plan in place in the event that there is a dangerous argument and they need to exit on the fly, and we help them do that. As you can see, we serve many people here in Orange County. I will tell you, in 2020, when the world shut down, it looked really different for domestic violence agencies, because now our clients who were able to go to work for 8 or 9 hours a day, including commute time, or go to school, were now trapped inside their home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with their batterer. And our hotline calls went up by 65%. And it continues to this day. We have a continued increase of hotline calls because people are on edge. It's scary out there. And really, the person that they turn to act out on their aggression is the one that they are in the home with. Here is our 24-hour hotline. You can also go on our website. We have many ways if you want to get involved. There's so many ways you can get involved by donating your own personal items that you no longer use or want. I promise you, there's some things that don't even make it into our resale stores because we have needs for our clients in our shelter. So they just go right to our shelter to help those clients. We also offer a 40-hour domestic violence advocacy training course. In the state of California, if you volunteer or work for a domestic violence agency, you have to have a 40-hour certification course, of which we are authorized to give that course. We will be giving our next one in March. You can go online on Get Involved, and all of these things you see on the screen will pop up, including our 40-hour training, and you can register, and it's virtual. It used to be in person, but we are offering it virtual, but they are not teaching models. It is live training. So we bring in experts from outside, from the district attorney's office, survivors who tell their stories, psychologists, psychiatrists, as well as the various managers in our agencies talking about that particular wheelhouse, whether it's restraining orders and so on. And with that, I will be available at the end to answer any questions after the end of this service. I do want to thank you for, one, recognizing this as a need in really the world, but here in Orange County. Thank you for opening your doors to me and to our agency, and to be able to share the problem, but even more important, the solution, because there is a solution to this. And I have great hope. I do. I have great hope for our families. So with that, thank you.
Thank you so much, Veronica. You certainly covered a lot of new ideas to me and probably to our congregation. So we appreciate very much hearing about Laura's House and the good work that you do. Our closing hymn this morning is called Open the Window, and it's very pertinent today. The first verse talks about parents fighting like snakes from a child's viewpoint. So it happens. So, Carol? This is hymn number, oops, I'm sorry. I don't have the hymn number, I'm sorry. Ah,
1022.
okay.
Open the window. Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Mama and Papa are fighting like snakes. Open the window, let the dove fly in. See what's on the top on the other side. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Beggars under doors and the fence is so high. Open the window, let the dove fly in. See what's to discover on the other side. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Borders round countries, borders round the sky. Open the window, let the dove fly in. The only border close to you, the border around your mind. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Some people have money, some people have none. Open the window, let the dove fly in. What's the use of money if your heart's gone numb? Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in. This big old world is a great big mess. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, find peace and rest. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in.
Wonderful, Carol. Thank you. I'd like to leave you with a closing thought from a favorite of our congregation, Reverend John O'Donohue. The beauty that emerges from woundedness is a beauty infused with feeling, a beauty different from the beauty of landscape and the cold, perfect form. This is a beauty that has suffered, that it suffered its way through the ache of desolation until the words or music attempted to equal the hunger and desperation at its heart. It must also be said that not all woundedness succeeds in finding its way through to beauty of form. Most woundedness remains hidden, lost inside forgotten silence. Indeed, in every life, there is some wound that continues to weep secretly, even years after attempted healing, where woundedness can be refined into beauty. A wonderful transfiguration takes place. Thank you to Laura's House for helping the wounded find the way to a wonderful transfiguration in their lives. We extinguish our candle now. Paul, could you please do that for us in the church? Thank you, Paul. Laura's House opens the door and lets the dove fly in. Let's remember that. There are many ways we can help Laura's House if you so choose. Let's rise now to sing Let There Be Peace on Earth. And if you're at home, sing loud enough so that we can hear you. We're an awesome fellowship.
Please join me. Let there be peace on earth,
And let it begin with me.
The peace that was meant to be. We are thankful. Let us walk with each other. Perfect
Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my song of love. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth. Let it begin with me. Have a lovely day, everybody.
Thank you, Carol. Let's stay for some questions with Veronica.